Bitcoin futures posting their best week ever as the crypto trade sizzles. The CBOE and CME futures both up 13% this week. Breaking it all down is a man who is too hot to handle himself, Dom Chu. Hey, Dom.
Well, forget about hot, Melissa. How about roller coaster ride, up and down, or hot and cold, whatever you want to call it. What we have seen in the midst of all of this price action for underlying Bitcoin is a rise in trading interest in the two futures contracts tied to the cryptocurrency. The slightly more seasoned CBOE Bitcoin futures are now trading around 4,000 contracts a day. According to the CBOE, the open interest in front-month Bitcoin futures stands at around 2,830 contracts. Reminder, those CBOE futures are 1 Bitcoin of exposure per 1 contract. Move now to the CME futures, which are 5 Bitcoins of exposure per 1 future. The average daily volume there, 823 contracts. Open interest in the front month, 642 contracts. That's according to data from the CME group. Now, the CME and CBOE both up around 2% on the week as stocks themselves. We've also seen a rise in some of the stocks of other so-called Bitcoins, right? Bitcoin companies. Check out, for instance, online retailer Overstock.com, which is pivoting more towards the blockchain technology side of things. It's up 32% in the last 5 days. Payments processor Square has been dabbling with Bitcoin transactions. Melissa, those shares up 17% in that time span, bouncing back from a recent pullback. But still, just take a look at those stocks as an interesting move in that whole ecosystem. Back over to you.
All right. Thank you, Dom. Have a good weekend. Dom Chu in the newsroom. So, Beeks, what do you make of the recent activity and the fact that Bitcoin futures are trading much closer to Bitcoin core?
That, to me, is what's interesting here, right? When we first had those Bitcoin futures come out, you could almost pick up 8% between the time they came out and selling a longer dated, let's call it March future. You'd get 8%. That has come down significantly. Part of the reason why is not a lot of brokers were trading futures. Therefore, institutions couldn't necessarily trade them in size. Now that you're getting expanding open interest, you're getting expanding volume, you're going to start to see that pick up. You're going to start to see the spread between Bitcoin and the futures compress a bit. And that's all a good thing for the ecosystem. That means that it's operating in a healthy way, and it's operating in a way that it should, like every other future market.
In terms of what it's doing, it doesn't seem to be doing anything to volatility. I mean, the thinking was that perhaps it would dampen some of the volatility in the underlying asset.
Yeah.
We haven't really seen that.
I don't think we've seen that so much yet. I think over time, I think that's going to be one of those things 1-2 years down the line we'll say, oh, you know what? Volatility slowly started to die down. As more institutions ramp up, and now you can have that selling pressure from short sellers in futures. If they're long the underlying, selling the futures, that should compress volatility. But that's something that's going to take a bit of time.
Mike, Dom had mentioned Bitcoin stocks like Overstock and Square, which is offering Bitcoin sales through its Cash App. What are we seeing in terms of options activity? I would imagine that would be pretty active.
Well, there's no question that both of those and also the CBOE and CME have seen significant increases in options activity since they made the announcement that they were going to be participating either as Overstock has in accepting it or as CME and CBOE have in listing futures on this, which I think are a very good idea for the two exchanges, certainly. One thing I would say, though, is that a lot of very good news about it seems to be priced into these things already. CBOE, which is innovative amongst the exchanges, I like what they're doing, but it's not a cheap stock. 40 times earnings. I think CME is trading about 30 times earnings. So I like to see them moving in this direction. I think it's going to be helpful for them in the long run, but the stocks aren't cheap here.
What do you make of the action? We were saying that these are all tethered to Bitcoin, and they are. And, of course, the futures are as well, Carter. So in terms of Bitcoin itself, it made quite a bounce off of those lows.
Didn't it? I mean, I think that's the important thing in how a 44% decline seems like a great thing in and of itself, and yet we've seen 2 90% declines, 3 others that were 70%, several that were 35 and 40, and yet each time, this is the end. Why does it have to be the end? And you have never thought it was the end.
No, in fact, there's a website that chronicles every time Bitcoin has died over the last 9 years, and it's a pretty long list. So, no, I don't think this is the end. But what you highlight with the volatility, I think investors need to know. This is an extremely volatile asset class. 1 to 5% of your risk assets you could put into this asset class. I would not take out a mortgage to buy this, take a mortgage on your house. That's a bad idea.
Is there a warning, though, Carter, in terms of the technicals of it, that the decline that we saw a couple Fridays ago really isn't the big decline that we should be expecting this go-around in the rally in Bitcoin?
Right, meaning
because the other declines have been much deeper with very strong bounce
There
back.
were some that were deeper, but there's several, 8, 10, 12, 15 that are all 30 to 40%. It just seems to me it's another one of those.